would like to introduce Harbor District Commissioner Jess Ramirez.
I asked as to why they had invited me to speak at this event today. And they keep telling me, well, you're a longshoreman. You got to tell the story how you went up here from wherever you're from. So there it goes, guys. This is
And you forgot you're a veteran, Jess.
well, yeah, right. Well, I'm a Vietnam veteran, but that's going to come later. So my story is a happy story, okay? So you can put your handkerchiefs away. I'm not going to make you cry, all right? It's with all the stuff that's going on in our country. This is a good story. So it started in Texas, in Juarez, when I was born. Okay, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but I'm going to condense it. I come from a background where my parents had lost 2 or 3 kids of starvation, malnutrition in Mexico. So when we hit Juarez, I was born sort of dead. They call it dehydrated now, but my mother didn't know that. So my sister, who was 15 years old, went down to the city, begged for a doctor, found a doctor, brought it to that little hut that my parents lived, and gave me and drops of water. So because of that, I always told the story to my kids. You know, they got tired of it, about how water had saved me. And so I wanted to write a book about gotitas de agua, little drops of water, how that enabled me to be here today. And so my daughter, who's here, picked up the lead. She wrote a book called Eat Less Water. It's a little commercial, guys. Eat Less Water, and if you want to see the story about how I survived, it's in her book. Okay, so please look for it. But anyway, so I was 10 years old, went to the movies in El Paso, and I saw this great movie called GI Blues with Elvis Presley. All right, and I'm fascinated with what he's doing in Germany. So once I left the movies, I knew that I was going to join the Army at 10 years old. I mean, that was part of my physique already. I knew I wanted to join the Army, and I wanted to go to Europe. I wanted to do what Elvis Presley did over there. I mean, I loved it, okay? So, needless to say, we spent about 10 years migrating from El Paso to all the fields in California, picking up the different crops and all that. And in 1958, we settled here in Oxnard. And the reason being is that they needed a couple of businessmen, and I found this later, that one of the gentlemen that had lived in El Paso, they were looking for stonemasons. So one of them, Mr. Loya, went to El Paso and found my father, who was a great stonemason. And yesterday I took my daughter to Colonia and showed her some of the fences that my father had built. I mean, he did beautiful work. So he brought my father back to Oxnard. He had been in Santa Paula as a bracero in 1950, so he kind of liked the lifestyle that California has to offer, you know, the life of the rich and famous. So we settled here in Oxnard. He started doing his work out of stonemasons, and they got some beautiful stuff that's done. And so that's how we wind up here. So I went to high school. And I knew that at some point I needed to join the Army. So before I got drafted, I joined. I said I don't want to be drafted because I wanted to go to Europe. So at that time, they gave you an assignment or a school. So I took Europe on assignment because I figured I would go to Europe, and every 3 months I go to different parts of the European theater, and I'll have a good time. So after basic, I went to Alabama helicopter school. Huey, and if you're in the military, you understand what the Huey is a symbol of the Vietnam War. So I was in school. There was 43 of us in that class, and when we finished, 3 months later, everyone in my classmates went to the 1st Cavalry Division, medevac in Vietnam. Okay, and they kept telling me, "You're gonna go with us?" I said, "No, I can't go with you, man. I signed up. I'm an RA. They gotta send me to Europe." Well, needless to say, they sent me to Virginia. For a month, they didn't know why I was there. Finally, they realized that I was there for more school, so I went to the CH-47 Chinook School, another helicopter school. I'm done with that, and finally they sent me to Germany. Finally, I went to Germany. So I'm in Munich, Germany, I don't like beer, and that's Bavaria country. You know, I don't drink beer. You know, I was a nice kid. So, I'm not a drinker. I didn't have any part of the taste, but later on I did though. So, I'm watching the Bob Hope show during Christmas, and I'm there sitting in a nice barrack, and I'm feeling guilty. You know, I should be in Vietnam. You know, I mean, I should be in Vietnam. I should be here. I mean, I'm feeling guilty. So, a little later on, they called us. They needed of all things, they needed longshoremen in Vietnam. Okay, no one had ever heard that the Army even had longshoremen. So thousands of us were pulled out of Europe after I was there for 6 months. Come back to Virginia, Fort Eustis, got trained as a longshoreman. Put us on C-130s, and there we go, flying to Vietnam. 56 hours flying time. We had our combat gear, our rifles, and everything else ready to go. They didn't tell us where exactly we were going to go, but we knew we were going to go to Vietnam. But they didn't tell us until we landed. So we landed in Cam Bay, right? Cam Bay, if you know about Vietnam, it's a pretty safe place to be, all right? Some of my closest friends are all Vietnam vets, and they all got Purple Hearts. They all got Silver Stars. They all got wounded. They were in the jungles, and they make fun of me because it's just you weren't in the real war. I mean, you know, but I think that unloading ships for the military effort, for the war effort, that's just as important as being out there in the front line, because without us, they don't have no vehicles. They don't have anything. So anyway. So that's my story. So I'm discharging all this cargo, and I'm seeing that it's all from Port Hueneme. So the reason that I'm here today is because the war worked for me. Because here, after I get out, I come to the dispatch hall, and I'm telling my story, and they put me to work right away, loading the same ships that I used to be unloaded in Vietnam. So for the last 50 years, I've been hanging out there down the street in this beautiful port, which I call paradise, because that port has given me all the things that I needed to send my 4 beautiful daughters to the best schools money can buy in this country, all right? Coming from that background that I came from and fulfilling what I have done with my kids, because that's my legacy. My kids are my legacy. So again, my story is a good story. And I thank the Lord that saved me. I know that 52,000 people didn't make it back, but I'm one of them that did. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Keynote speaker for us today is the Commodore from Naval Construction Group 1, Captain Mike Song.
All right. Hey, so I thank you very much for this, the opportunity to speak here today. But I will say that if you had to really talk about a keynote speaker, Jess, I think you got it. That was an awesome story. So absolutely fantastic. So to the city, to the Historical Society, lots of folks put this on today. Oxnard Harbor District, really thank you for this opportunity for all of us to get together. A couple things I'd like to say first off. So first, I want to thank Larry also. Talk about tenacity, and I think that's absolutely right, it's tenacity. It was over a year ago that Larry said, hey, next year at Veterans Day, you need to come here and you need to be the speaker. So probably about once a month, I got an email from Larry saying, hey, by the way, you're going to be the speaker. So here I am. So I made it. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Captain Mike.
So hey, I want to point out to the Sea Cadets and that entire organization, you know, and the JROTC, the idea of service, and especially service at such a young age, and volunteering to do that, and recognizing what that service brings to our country is very, very valuable. And you look very sharp today. Very proud of what you are and what you represent. So thanks for doing what you do. All right, so of course, I feel honored to be up here, Mayor. I think anytime I stand near Captain Bob Quinn and Master Chief Daniels, Commander Stewart over here, I'm always humbled and honored. It's the legacy of these great folks that have gone before. So again, thank you. Congresswoman Brownlee, appreciate you being here. Representative Assemblywoman Jackie Irwin, thank you. So it's great to have you here. So, hey, that national anthem. How about that national anthem? That was absolutely awesome. That was absolutely awesome. So thank you very much. You do a great honor to all of us. And the color guard, where's the color guard back there somewhere? They left? All right. Hey, they look great too. So great stuff. All right. So let's do a little inventory today. Coast Guard. How many people from the Coast Guard here? So, sir, please stand up. All right. All right. That's it. One representative. All right. How about the Army?
Yes, sir.
Hoorah! Or should I say ooh-ah? All right. Thank you very much. Air Force. Oh. All right. Marine Corps. Hoorah! And of course the Navy. All right. All right, great stuff. Hey, so how about family members? Any family members of anybody's service? I'm talking aunts, uncles, anything. Yep, here, stand up, please. All right. So I point that out because I think, as we've already covered, is that we don't do this stuff. We don't succeed. We can't go forward and do what we do if it's not for the family members that stand behind us. It's because if mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, right? We've said that plenty of times before. And if you're not there supporting what we do, we can't in good conscience go forward. So thank you for that, and thank you for everything that you've done. For all those service members that stood up, thanks for your service over the years, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. All right. So it's truly an honor to have this opportunity to speak to you all on behalf of our vets. So on behalf of our vets, I wrestled with that a little bit because on behalf of implies that I'm part of a group that I'm not quite sure I was part of. See, I've always looked at the term veteran as a term of distinction. Those are things. The things that we learn from youth that we carry forward into adulthood, and so I hadn't really thought about that until I was asked to come do this. So, in the early '70s, I remember I had an Uncle Dick who spent over a year in Vietnam as a Huey pilot. Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars, Purple Heart. That's a vet. I remember those older gents from World War I, World War II, Korea, with their VFW uniforms on, marching in parades. We looked at them with a sense of awe. Those were vets, folks that answered our nation's call, some voluntarily, some not. Either way, they went into harm's way in conflicts against enemies and faced the ugliest of human conflict in conditions that many of us could never imagine. These ladies, and fewer of them then than there are today, and gentlemen, those are vets. So as I've gotten older, I recognized that sense of awe that I had for those vets, those distinguished men and women, was taught to me by my father, a true patriot who held in the highest regard service to one's country and the courage to answer the call. Probably the reason I stand here today, 26 years after I'd joined the military. Funny thing is, I never considered him a vet until probably just a few years ago. A submarine veteran, he himself served on diesel boats in the late 50s and early 60s. Any sub-vets here today? Just out of curiosity. I'll tell you, my hats are off to them. And I'm going to tell you a quick story about how I learned that my father was a veteran. So and it dawned on me. So my previous duty station before coming here was in Hawaii. I know it's rough. The things we do for our country, right? But But Dad came to visit, and if you've ever been to Hawaii and you've been to Oahu and the Pearl Harbor and the Arizona Memorial, there's a submarine there, right, called the Bowfin, and it's a diesel boat and somewhat of the same class of submarine that my father had served on. And so while we were there, we were going to go visit the Arizona, and part of this trip was going to go look at the submarine. Like, hey, this is good for Dad. And, he was on subs, and he'd always talked about that. Active in the Subvets of America. So we go on this submarine, or as we walk in, we're walking by the booth, and they, and if you've been there or any things that you go to like this, there's this audio thing that you could do. And so they offer it to my father, and he looks at them like they're crazy. Like, I don't need that thing. A couple expletives, but I'll leave those out. But no, he didn't need that. And so here is this man in his mid-70s. It'd been years, decades, since he's been on this thing. And so, okay. But I take the brochure, and we're going to go walking through. I've got my 2 boys with me, his grandsons. We go on that submarine. We go on that submarine, and we're walking down the stairs, and he starts talking. And he's talking as if he got off that submarine yesterday. And he's pointing out things on that submarine that's not in the brochure, no one else is talking about. But he says, oh, this is what that's for. And you do this to do that, and this, and there's this many batteries in that, and each of those batteries weighs this much, and there's this many torpedoes on this, and this is what, and he is going on and on. And I started asking him questions. I said, well, because I got the cheat sheet. And I started asking him questions. I said, hey, Dad, what about this? How many of those batteries are there? And like that, he's clicking it off. And I'll tell you, he knew that submarine front to back. He was so knowledgeable and could tell stories about what it meant to be on that submarine and what it meant to be when there's a full food store or when there wasn't a full food store. He knew when the water, where the water was, and he could tell you the smells of what it was like to be on that submarine. And it was so intriguing, it was so compelling that the people who had taken those audio cassettes to listen walking through that thing, they took them off to listen to my father talk about what it was like to be on that submarine. Yeah. So it dawns on me, that's a vet, right? A Cold War vet that kept the fight on even when the bullets weren't flying. But if any of you have ever read the book Blind Man's Bluff, I think that you could probably say that we were at war. It was just not a shooting war. And you'd probably look at that differently. He went to work every day to get a little bit better, to lean a little bit more forward, to make sure that they were ready to conduct their mission and go to war and in harm's way when necessary. And I'll tell you, that's the true sense of our military strength, is to go in every day to be a little bit better, to prepare for the what if. It may never come. It may be here tomorrow. It may never come in another 10, 15, 20 years. But we got to be ready all the time. That's what a veteran is. So I mentioned earlier that I wrestled with whether or not I'm a vet, because being a vet, especially on Veterans Day, means I'm part of an exclusive club that is getting smaller by the day. I'm never welcome in any exclusive clubs, so should I be so bold to say that I'm part of this one? So as I reflected on what to say today, I decided that I'd sneak in and hope nobody noticed. Of course, Bob and Master Chief Daniels will probably throw me out later, but possession is 9/10 of the law, and I've got the mic. All right. So, but then I realized it wasn't Mike Somm that got invited here to speak today. It was the Commodore of Naval Construction Group 1, a position in which I have the honor to serve and of which I'm the caretaker, the highlight of my military career. Also, like it or not, 26 years of service has me at the twilight of my military career, where I'm always one haircut away of being a gray, distinguished old fella. Or maybe just a gray-haired fella. But either way, it's really my position, backed up with some experience, that provides me a unique vantage point to talk to you today on behalf of our vets. So what's this vantage point? First, I work with some of the best people on the planet. Depending on the stats you look at, the percentage of the population that serves today ranges from 0.4% to about 1%. I'll go with the 1%. Point 4 is a little bit depressing. But these folks voluntarily raised their hand and swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies while we are at war. Jess, it reminds me of your comment, hey, I'm a little bit guilty. I shouldn't be in Germany. I need to go. Right? That's what these folks have done. Voluntarily raised their hand to go into harm's way. I've had the tremendous honor of leading this millennial generation that we talk so much about, and usually it's not in a very good manner, but I've had the opportunity to lead these folks in combat, in war. They built combat outposts in Afghanistan in what the Army called the heart of darkness, the birthplace of the Taliban. Shot at, rocketed, mortared, didn't matter, mission complete. The stories of this generation, with time behind them, sound a lot like those for those who have gone before us and add to the tremendous legacy of our fighting force. And now, as our peer competitors in China and Russia are establishing their place in the world, we find ourselves redefining where we fit in the scheme of things. Preparing for a conflict that'll look nothing like what we've encountered in Southwest Asia, but instead going back to what the Seabees' roots are in World War II in the Pacific, albeit with about 3% of the Seabees we had then. So I want you to, just as a side note, there were 320,000 Seabees in World War II. There are 326,000 people in the Navy today. Food for thought. All right, yeah. So the second reason that I have a unique vantage point here is that this position offers me the opportunity, if not demands, that I reflect on and celebrate the last 75 years of our specialty as in the Navy, the U.S. Navy Seabees. As we celebrate our 75th birthday this year, I've gotten to know people like Master Chief Daniels and Bob Quinn and many, many others like them. World War II, Korea, Vietnam. If you consider the enormity of their tasks, the environment in which they needed to complete them, I have three thoughts. One, we should thank God there are people who stand up to go carry out our nation's bidding. Two, that we stand on the shoulders today of giants, and that their ability to get her done, that's my time in Mississippi coming out there, it shows us and allows us the opportunity to believe in that we can do today. And three, the humility in which they talk about what they've done is almost comical. Again, the sacrifices they've made, the problems they've solved, and the conditions under which they solve them are worthy of our utmost respect and admiration, but they'll tell you those stories as if they were digging post holes in their backyard. So for our Vietnam vets in the crowd, can you guys please stand? You know, our nation was in an interesting spot when you all served, and today, and while we're on active duty, we get the gratitude of the population. You didn't get that when you came home, and so I would like to just say, I don't think we do it enough, but publicly say thank you for what you've done. Again, we stand on the shoulders of giants, and you are those giants, so thank you for your service. Finally, the third thing that the vantage point I get is I get to meet and interact with a community that truly and deeply cares about the military. Sure, us being here is great for the economy, but the relationship we have with the people of this community goes well beyond the dollar. You know, so in prepping for this today, I came across a couple of articles that bemoan the fact that the celebrations that we have today don't look like what they used to. Fewer parades, smaller ceremony, fewer people coming out, or that the phrase, thanks for your service, is more a catchphrase and something that's required than when people see people in uniform that's really void of meaning. So as I reflected on that statement a little bit, it made me realize how lucky we are here in Port Hueneme to live in a community that generally cares about its military. I've said it before, but the 75 years Seabees have lived, trained, and deployed to war to conduct humanitarian service and disaster relief missions, or just further the reach of our nation, have all happened from this base and from this community. We could not do that without having comfort that our families were cared for and accepted as part of this community. When our nation says California doesn't support the military, you all are a shining example of why they're wrong and why that is to the contrary. So while we're here today to honor our vets, the vets of our nation, I'd like to say thank you all for your support. All right, so I've talked long enough, and I'm going to wrap it up here before Bob and Master Chief actually do throw me out of this club. I'm truly humbled to come and speak again on behalf of our vets. But I'll close with this. While the strength of our nation is represented by our military, the depth of that strength lies in the communities that support the military and to honor those who have served so nobly and sacrificed so much. So while you honor us today, we thank you, because you ultimately will make us ready. You are the foundation of when this nation needs a larger military again. It's going to be because of folks like you that stand up and band together across this country that makes the service a requirement. We have 1% of our nation serves today only because we need 1% of that nation to serve. But it's the folks that sit out here today that when that requirement happens and it has to go up, that we're ready. And we're ready because we have that depth of commitment and support from you all. So, thank you for attending today. God bless you, your families. God bless all the troops across all the services, and God bless America.
I'm not sure if Larry had any devious purpose in having us close with a song, but in honor of Mike Somm, I guess, we're going to have Bill Stewart lead the CB song. Please, all of you who know it, and I know there's a whole bunch of them here, join in. I'm not sure he needs any help, but let's give it to him anyway. Bill Stewart.
We'll pave the way to victory and guard it day and night. And we promise to remember the 7th of December with the Seabees of the Navy, bees of the 7th Sea.
To those of us who spent our lives as Seabees, that's an important song. It still is a crappy tune. We have a closing prayer. Travers, I thought I saw you coming in. To give us a closing prayer, we have Henry Travers Bard Newton, the great-grandson of Thomas Bard. Thomas Bard was a veteran. I'm not sure about Travers. He's probably smarter than that.
Good morning. My mother, Joanna Bard Newton, sends her greetings to you. She was born in Oxnard in 1917 when her father, Richard Bard, known as the father of when Amy Harbor was in France fighting Germany. And my mother gave birth to her first child when my dad was in Germany fighting the Nazis in the Battle of the Bulge, and some of you may have heard of the Remagen Bridge conflict. So we spoke about this prayer this morning, and she reminded me that her father, Richard Bard, always had a photo of President Lincoln in a special place in his office that he inherited from his father, Thomas Bard. And my mother has a little diary of Thomas, who was a scout in the Civil War, and he was pretty good on a horse, and he knew how to operate telegraph, and he's out riding near Gettysburg, and it says, "I see the rebels massing," and he could climb up a telegraph pole and tap into it and send a message. And his brother Cephas was in the terrible Battle of Antietam, and he saw such terrible wounds that he went to Jefferson Medical College after that. His dissertation was on the treatment of gunshot wounds. So, and just one little point at the link between President Lincoln and Port Hueneme is that Thomas Bard was sent here by Thomas Scott, who was in Lincoln's cabinet in charge of railroad transportation in December 1864. And so I sometimes wonder if this harbor would ever be here if it wasn't for Lincoln and Mr. Scott. So this is from President Lincoln's second inaugural address, 1865, just before he was assassinated, just a short portion of it. 1/8 of the whole population were colored slaves, not distributed generally over the Union, but localized in the southern part of it. These slaves constituted a particular and powerful interest. All knew that this interest was somehow the cause of the war. With malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Travers. And we want to thank all of you for coming. I'm not sure who in the city is going to take credit for the beautiful weather, but in North Oxnard, I can tell you, when I jumped in the car to come over here, I threw a coat in because it was cold. So, thank you again for helping us recognize Veterans Day and recognize those veterans here in our community. And to Larry, who snags every one of us who can't run faster than he does. He and all the rest of the volunteers did a great job, and my thanks to them. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of the day.